Bulldogs and Mastiffs have existed since prehistoric times. These powerful canines have always been used to catch and hold animals much larger than themselves. Even armed with primitive weapons, ancient man was able to hunt huge beasts because of the bulldog's ability to conquer bison, boar, and other gigantic herbivores. Prehistoric bulldogs were a force multiplier for primitive hunters and helped them bring down tons of extra meat that would have been impossible to kill otherwise. Thousands of years of breeding a dog that was able to catch animals many times bigger and stronger than themselves created a canine of incredible fortitude, as well as one that possessed superb speed, strength, and endurance. While the principal mission of the ancient bulldog was to bring home the bacon, he also had to defend the kill from packs of wolves or bears. Prehistoric man probably used primitive Mastiff hunting dogs to defend their campsites against roving marauders. The Babylonians used Mastiffs and bulldogs to hunt lions. This was the ultimate test for any canine. It was only natural that the warlike Babylonians would harness the strength, speed, endurance, and tenacity of bulldogs against human opponents. They were among the first people to use dogs in combat. In fact, the Babylonians created entire villages devoted solely to the task of breeding and training Mastiff war dogs. The Greeks and Romans employed a war dog that was descended from the Babylonian Mastiff. It was called the Molossus. All modern Mastiffs and Bulldogs are descended from this dog and share in its heritage. Molossus war dogs were used against men, horses, and other war dogs on the field of battle. For centuries, Mastiffs and Bulldogs were the dogs of choice when either a guard dog or war dog was called for. But warfare changed. It became mechanized, and the descendants of the Molossus were no longer used in the original role. Shepherds became the common military dog because they fit better into industrial armies. Consequently, shepherds also became the most common type of guard dog. While bulldogs continued to be used to hunt and catch wild animals, they were not used extensively in modern times as guard dogs. Many bull and mastiff breeds have been converted into show dogs and have almost lost all their natural abilities. In the last few decades, the world has rediscovered bulldogs and mastiffs as family guard dogs. Since it is no longer practical for urban bulldog owners to test their dogs on large wild animals, a canine sport has been created to test the physical capabilities of these formidable and noble dogs. That sport is called Iron Dog. It is the first canine sport designed specifically for working bulldogs and mastiffs. In an Iron Dog trial, a dog competes in 6 events. To participate in an Iron Dog trial, your dog must first earn a sport protection title. We recommend you qualify for Iron Dog with the BST. This is a BST caliber puppy. The first step in training for the BST is basic obedience. For the next 27 minutes, Dave Delasegas will instruct you in basic obedience.
Oh, you're so full you can't think.
When teaching your dog how to heel, prior to trying to teach the dog to heel, I much prefer to teach the dog to focus on me with the look or the watch command. By teaching the dog to look in my eyes from a sit position prior to heeling, the dog then learns to concentrate on the handler. And when the dog learns to concentrate on the handler by focusing on his eyes, you can then start to circle right. Here we'll show you how to teach the focus work. By bringing the hand up, the dog looks at eye contact. It gives the dog a target in the early stages of teaching to focus.
Good look.
Pay the dog. Good.
Look.
The reason to use the hand is that this teaches the dog a position that you want him to look at, which is between your eyes.
Good look.
By the dog learning to look
Good
you in the
look.
eyes and you feeding him in a straight line from your eyes with your hand
Look.
to his mouth, the dog will quickly learn that look means to look me in the eyes.
Look.
Over time,
Look.
you can tell the dog, look,
Good
and as
look.
Dave demonstrates here, he looks in the eyes. Dave will reward.
Good look. Look.
He should have paid the dog a bit sooner
Look.
there. Now he has to go back to remedial. Good. Tell the dog, have the bait ready. The handler should always have the bait ready. Tell the dog, look.
Look.
Good. He looks, you bring it up and pay. Excellent.
Good look.
Excellent.
Good look.
As you can see, this isn't the dog's first day of the look command.
Look.
In the very beginning, you'll need to keep your
Yes,
hand
look.
up by your face
Look.
to teach the dog. Once the dog starts to comprehend it, I'll pull my hand away, tell the dog to look, give a light correction if necessary.
Look.
Good.
Good
And then
look.
pay.
Good
Excellent.
look.
By
Good.
first teaching this dog to focus on you with the look command, it teaches the dog intense concentration in the training. Once the dog learns to look, then we start with the heel command, and by
Look.
circling to the right,
Look.
the dog is constantly having to focus on us
Good
because
look.
we're heeling away from the dog in a
Good
small right-hand circle.
Good
Dave will demonstrate that now.
Look. Look. Heel. Look, heel. Look, heel. Good look,
Good.
heel.
And by incorporating the look heel in the early stages, the dog learns to focus on the handler. The handler should pay from the eyes also in the heeling when he tells the dog to look.
Look.
Look, heel. Good.
Look.
At this point, this dog has enough sessions that we are applying negative reinforcement when the dog doesn't focus.
Look, heel.
Early on, when you're first
Good look,
teaching,
heel.
don't apply corrections for a
Good look,
number of
heel.
sessions. Good. After the dog has a number of sessions and the dog comprehends look and heel, we'll start to correct when the dog doesn't focus.
Good look,
Good look,
heel.
heel. Good.
Good look, heel.
Here you can see a very
Good.
nice concentrated picture.
Good.
You also want to remember to pay the dog. Halt. Good. You also want to remember to pay the dog in the perfect heeling position. Don't pay the dog from behind or to the side. Pay the dog in the frontal position just under your belt buckle where the head of the dog is in the perfect heel position looking at you. While teaching the look command isn't mandatory to teach your dog to heel, over time you'll find that this really helps teach the dog to concentrate under high distraction.
Good look.
After teaching the dog the look command or the watch command and circling to the right, and you've taught the dog now to watch and to heel, then we start to straighten the heeling out, meaning we go in a straight line. This is a little more advanced technique, and you want to make sure that your dog totally understands the look command and the heel command, because at this point if the dog doesn't concentrate, we're going to start to apply corrections. Always remember that after you've taught the dog the behavior and the dog absolutely understands it, and you start to work the dog under some distractions, you're going to get some lack of concentration from the dog. At this point, it's mandatory to go to negative reinforcement or corrections so that the dog complies to the learned behavior. You'll see in this video, working two different dogs, that the male dog will require more severe corrections than the female dog. So the level of negative necessary, the level of correction necessary for a dog to comply to learn behavior is dictated by the dog. Put in a more simple manner, the more stubborn the dog, the harder the correction. The more sensitive the dog, the less the correction. You never want to correct the dog too hard, nor do you want to get into a habit of correcting the dog multiple times too lightly. So you must find the sensitivity level of the dog that when you give a correction, the dog doesn't want to receive the correction again and then complies to the learned behavior. But always remembering, never to correct the dog out of frustration or anger. Always correct the dog simply for lack of correct behavior. So here we'll get the focus. Dave will circle some to the right. When the dog is correct, we'll straighten it out and go in a straight line.
Look. Good look. Heel.
Here he's late on the correction.
Good. Good heel. Good heel.
This is also a bit, somewhat of a warm-up routine. Prior to ever going on the field, you can take the dog back to his fundamentals, meaning you're going to circle to the right and maintain focus before you ever go straight. Oftentimes when you get into a BST competition, many people don't warm their dog up correctly. You should get the dog in a proper frame of mind prior to competing. Here the dog is slow on the about turn, so comes the correction.
Look. Good look, heel.
Good.
Good look, heel.
Also, it's very important a certain tempo in the healing. If you heel with a sluggish attitude, the dog will be sluggish. If you heel with an up-type attitude like Dave is, you notice this makes energy in the dog. Good. Come back. Here the dog's late on the turn. Straighten out. You're going crooked. Again, like in the earlier training on the tape, it's very important that you make good handling maneuvering. It's vital that the handler learns how to manage his dog. 1 minute of correct training is much better than 10 minutes of average training. Here the work is pretty good. Good heel. Good. And come to a quick halt with sit. Good. And here the dog is straight. You notice that the dog is slightly lagging on the turns. This is a normal progression where the dog slightly lags. You have to teach the dog that they have to concentrate fully. And it isn't important that you come out and heel for 10, 15, 20 minutes. What's important is that any healing that you do is correct. And oftentimes you're better off working the dog just several minutes of very correct healing. And that way the dog learns that by paying attention, concentrating on the look command, staying at the handler's side in a proper heel position, he'll be rewarded with food. And even more important to the dog over time, he'll be rewarded by not being corrected. Very good. After the dog has learned all these other fundamentals about the healing, the look, the focus, circling to the right, being rewarded with food, and then you come to the point where it's time to make negative reinforcement or corrections with the dog, then as you start to advance in your training for the BST work, you'll need to work the dog with a change of pace from normal, fast, slow, normal. And always keep in mind that down the road, if you want to do the BST too, you'll need to be able to heel your dog off leash on the protection field. This is the most advanced form of distraction our dogs can face. So by doing this foundation work correctly, teaching correctly, and then applying correct and fair negative reinforcement, as you progress in your training, you'll see that your dog can work under more and more distraction. Always remember, don't put a more untrained dog in the early stages of his training under extreme distraction. First, teach the dog to listen under less distraction, make your negative reinforcement under less distraction, and as you progress, as we will today, under change of paces and other distractions, I gradually incorporate higher and higher distraction. This gradual training process allows the dog to be trained under conditions that advance him and yet don't overwhelm him. While this may sound technical, it should be quite easy to understand if you just take a minute to think about what you're doing and where you're at in your training. So here Dave is going to go through some change of paces from a normal, fast, slow, normal. And I'm sure you'll see that the dog isn't 100% correct, and Dave will have to apply some corrections.
Good. Good.
About turn. Okay, good. About turn. Good.
Heel. Heel. Heel.
The handler goes from normal, fast, slow, normal, and to halts. Here this was quite a nice sequence. Again, he gets the focus. Before he ever moves, he gets the dog to focus on him. Very important. If your dog won't focus prior to healing, keep working on the focus. Here the dog's slow, needs a correction. Good. Come back right into the fast, Dave. Right away fast. Right away. Good. Much better. You must put the dog in situations where the dog is going to have some problems. This is how you advance the training. If you constantly try to safeguard your training so that everything looks good without taking your advancing steps in training, your dog won't reach a higher level of training. Here you can see the dog is about 80 to 90% correct and advancing well in his training. We'll now progress into the sit in motion. This will give a good illustration of how to break the exercise down. Both the sit in motion and the down in motion require many different behaviors. They first require focus on the handler, correct heeling for 10 to 15 paces, a sit out of motion, a sit stay, and the handler walking away 30 paces, turning around and coming back to the dog on the judge's command. So in the beginning, by trying to teach your dog to sit while you're heeling, this is very difficult for the dog. So what I like to do in the early stages with this is the handler will heel with the dog. When the dog's heeling correct, the handler will come to a halt, say sit, and quickly walk away. Oftentimes you need to have a second set of eyes on you or a spotter to let you know if the dog has sat. It's very important that you don't teach the dog to sit or down out of motion by turning and looking at the dog. The trial regulations require that you look straight ahead until the dog sit or down out of the motion. If you turn to look at the dog or hesitate, this will cost you point deductions, and overall this could cause a reason for you to fail the BST, obedience. So here we'll give a demonstration of that. Dave will heel down the field, get the dog's focus, do his 10 or 15 paces and come to a halt.
Heel.
Notice we have a second dog here, this female dog. This dog is much more sensitive than the first dog. Good. He'll come back to the dog, pay the dog in the front. Being that this dog is more sensitive, we won't apply near as hard a corrections with this dog. By coming into the front and paying the dog, instead of going to the side, the dog learns to sit very motionless. If you try to come to the side and pay the dog, oftentimes the dog will then move.
Look heel. Good look heel. Good look heel. Sit.
Dave, go up the field and come this way. We'll get a better illustration for the camera.
Heel.
As you can see, this dog is not as good in the heeling as a previous dog. Also, the level of correction with this dog has to be much lower.
Sit.
Good.
Good sit. Good.
There, the dog should have had a better focus on the handler prior to the handler coming to a halt and saying sit. Always remember, if your dog isn't heeling correctly, you shouldn't progress into another exercise, such as the down in motion or the sit in motion.
Heel.
Good. Pivot, come to a halt, and get your focus prior to the sit in motion. Good.
Look. Good look.
Good.
Good look. Heel. Look. 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 Good.
Good. Now he has the focus and he can progress.
Sit.
Good. Walking away just a few paces. It's not important that you walk far away. What you're trying to do, like in earlier training, is get in multiple repetitions so that the dog totally comprehends the work.
Good sit.
At this point, we'll try one out of the motion and see if we have some success. If the dog doesn't sit, the spotter will signal the handler that the dog didn't sit, and the handler will quickly turn around and come back to the dog and correct the dog into a proper sit.
Look. Good look. Good look. Good. Look. Heel. Look. Look. Good look. Sit.
Good. As you can see, this dog isn't perfect in the heeling, and the work doesn't have to be perfect to progress, but this is how you learn how to train the dog. This dog needs more focus work, but a successful sit in motion. By simply halting when you heel, telling the dog sit, the dog learns how to do the behavior. Once this is progressing nicely, you can come to a quicker halt, walk away quicker, and then soon you can do it out of the motion. Good. Next, we're going to work on the down in motion. As I said earlier, just like the sit in motion, the handler wants to get the dog to focus, heel correctly, tell the dog stop, tell the dog down, walk away a few paces, and then return to the dog and give the dog the food while he's laying down. After we make the progression from several halts with the down command, we'll then try one putting all our behaviors together. As I mentioned earlier, we have multiple behaviors. We have correct heeling, we have down out of motion, we have recall to the front straight position, and to the finish. So we'll test this dog after and see how all these behaviors look when we put them together. So Dave will give us a demonstration of that.
Heel.
First, getting focused heeling. He'll come up from the basic sit position. Good. He'll get the sit position, and now he's going to heel 10 to 15 paces, stop and tell the dog down.
Down.
But the dog doesn't down, so he has to give a little correction. Now he'll come back to the dog, but obviously he won't give the dog a food reward. This dog is more advanced and should get a food reward. He'll go back and repeat.
Sit. Heel. Sit. Look. Heel.
Focused heeling to a halt with a quick down.
Down. Good down.
The praise, verbal praise is correct here. Remembering both the dogs you're seeing today on this video are at the intermediate stages. They've been taught behaviors and we're now applying negative reinforcement, but we're still working at a remedial level where we're applying food rewards and verbal rewards. And we're still breaking our exercises down into fundamentals.
Sit.
Now we'll go back and we'll try one out of the motion and see how our training looks. By occasionally trying the exercise in its complete form, we find out what we need to keep working on fundamentally.
Heel.
So again, it's focused heeling. We have a spotter,
Down.
comes the down, correct down, the handler walks away, 30 to 40 paces.
Good down. Good down.
He waits. In the competition, the judge will make the dog lay in the down for at least, usually 10 seconds or so. Upon the judge's signal, the handler will recall the dog.
Come. Heel.
Very nice. The dog does a correct down. He comes in the front. He's slightly crooked, and he's slightly crooked on the finish. So as you can see, this dog needs more fundamental work on teaching him to come in straight and to finish straight. But overall, you can see the exercise is coming along nicely and is almost in place. Also, several things you'll have to train for in your BST training will be working the dog, heeling through a group of 4 people, and also the gunshots. We won't be working the gunshots today, but I want to give you a little insight on how to work that. Many times people use large caliber gunshots at very close range in the beginning, and this can make a permanent impression of stress in the dog's brain. The problem with this is he stressed the nerves too hard. The best way to work the gunfire is to work the dog at a great distance from the early gunfire and use low-level 22 blanks. By doing this, the dog hears these light pops and has enough training that it shouldn't cause stress. As time goes by, you can move a little closer with the gunfire, but it's very important to never work right next to the dog with a gunfire. This is unnecessary for you to have success in the BST. Many dogs that are introduced to the gunfire incorrectly in the beginning with large caliber can have many problems for many training sessions after that. So by starting with light loads at a distance, generally you have no problem. So when you work the group, you want to have your dog trained enough that he knows how to heel quite correctly. There's no need to try to work the group real early in your training unless you have very high hunger drive and the dog's really focused on the food. As I said before, both these dogs today have enough training that we can apply corrections, so we'll give a little example of working in the group. Oftentimes in the group and the training, I like to work the dogs mostly to the right by working in a right-hand circle. If you go left, you're cutting the dog off, and also that can create a bit of a lagging problem. While you will have to do a left in the BST, I rarely do lefts in training because it's rarely required in competition. And this oftentimes, when you go left a lot, it cuts the dog off and then can cause a lag. And as we all know with bulldogs, a lag is a big problem. So here we're going to give a demonstration of the group.
Look. 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 Heel.
rights.
Sit. Proud.
Here, this is a good illustration with this dog and who's at an intermediate stage of training. You could see by the two people walking out there, the dog's focus in the heeling was not as good. The handler had to give multiple corrections with the dog to get focus simply because of the distraction of two people walking out and being near the dog. This is why your fundamentals have to be correct, and it's mandatory with the dog that you must use negative reinforcement over learned behavior to get the dog to comply under distraction. While a household pet may not need a lot of advanced negative reinforcement, a dog for the BST1 or the BST2 or a much more advanced working title such as a Schutzhund title will require negative reinforcement. The level of negative that you need to give each dog is dictated by the dog. A stubborn, strong-minded male dog oftentimes requires powerful pinch collar corrections under high distraction. Many times the more sensitive female dogs require much less negative. So always keep in mind, after you've taught the dog what you want through positive reinforcement, isolated repetition, that when you get to the point where it's time to apply corrections, apply a correction that is sufficiently strong that the dog doesn't want to receive it again, while always keeping in mind too much pressure can ruin a dog. So this balancing act is something that's very important. You learn how to train a dog correctly, and it's also mandatory to use negative reinforcement to get the dog to comply to learn behavior. It's oftentimes best if you can work with an experienced person who can guide you through these early training stages. A novice handler is going to make mistakes, and it's very important that they try to eliminate those mistakes as the days go on and they learn to train better. This is the job of the handler, and as a human being with superior intellect, we should have no problem learning quickly how to train a dog correctly. Earlier in the tape with the male dog, we showed you how to do the down out of motion, but we are now going to show you how to work the front position. By breaking this exercise down and working just a few feet from the dog, we teach the dog how to come in straight for a food reward. It's often best to teach the dog by showing the dog the bait and putting the bait in your mouth. This allows you to teach the dog in the early stages with your hands at your side, which the BST rules require. When the dog comes in straight and sits in front, then the handler can just drop the food into the dog's mouth. It's best often in early training to teach your dog how to catch food a little bit prior to doing this, because oftentimes the dog, if doesn't know how to catch food thrown to it or dropped out of the mouth, it'll miss the food and then have to pick it up off the ground, and this isn't ideal for our teaching. You can also have your hands to the side and feed the dog with your hands, but the problem with this is that the dog tends to come to the side of your hand where the food is and is crooked. And when this, in the early stages of training, is what the dog first learns, it becomes much more difficult to get the dog to come in straight. So here, this dog has a number of sessions with the recall, so we'll show you this training in a remedial way. He shows her the bait, he recalls her, tells her sit. Here it's not good enough. She's crooked. The handler should tell the dog sit. This dog has a tendency to want to jump on the handler prior to the food reward. So by breaking this exercise down, the handler needs to tell the dog come, and when she gets there, sit. This oversimplifies the training process and allows the dog to comprehend.
Sit.
Good. You can see the difference there. By telling her sit, it gives the dog a clear understanding of what he wants.
Heel.
And then the dog calmly gets a food reward. As time goes by, we won't have to tell the dog sit because the dog will be conditioned to come in and sit. But oftentimes it's best to break everything down to a very remedial level in the teaching phase. This is critical in the early stages.
Sit.
Here the dog's a bit far away. Ideally, the handler should have had the dog slightly closer. Also notice that the handler has taken his training pouch containing the food and spun it behind his back. This helps to keep the dog from attracting to the training pouch on the right or the left. These small techniques and understanding of fundamentals will help you to eliminate early training problems in the teaching phase.
Come.
Too far away.
Come.
And you forgot to say sit. See, here the dog went back to the old behavior. That's a handler error. And this is a good illustration of why we want to eliminate handler errors.
Come. Sit.
Good. By
Good.
doing
Good.
what his trainer told him here, the handler had success. By not telling the dog sit, the dog went back to the old behavior, which is to jump up on the handler. This is a good illustration of good and bad. So we'll do one more.
Down.
Shows her the bait.
Come. Come. Sit.
Good. Within a very short, and there's an illustration, a dog misses a bait. This is going to happen. Within a very short time, after a number of days of training, if you have to help the dog by stepping back or the dog is crooked, the dog gets no food reward. It's very important for the dog to learn they have to do the exercise correctly to be rewarded. In the very beginning, it's often fine to pay the dog when they just get straight. After your recall and the straight front, you'll have to do the finish. The best way to teach the finish in early training is to plant your left foot, tell the dog heel, and take a step with your right foot as Dave will demonstrate.
Heel.
This body motion
Sit.
helps the dog to leave the front sit position. Again, you step in front with a sit command, you plant your left foot, you tell the dog heel,
Heel.
pass the leash around, tell the dog sit, good, and you pay the dog. Here it's slightly crooked, but it's okay in the early training. Later on we want everything straight. Then, as the dog starts to understand this through multiple repetitions, the handler can simply pivot the shoulders and keep the feet square.
Heel.
The dog comes around, the sit command, good, and the pay. This body language helps the dog to learn. Now the handler can try one correctly with, that's the correct work. Standing straight, hands at the side,
Heel. Sit.
good. By teaching the dog in the beginning with this step and then weaning it down to the shoulder movement, the dog quickly learns that the heel command from the front position means go around and sit. We'll show you again. You plant your left foot, take a step, say heel.
Heel.
The dog comes around, you say sit. This is a very good way to teach the dog, and that's what we're doing here, showing you how to teach the dog in the beginning. Very good. And then the finished product should look something like this.
Heel. Sit.
Very good.
Good.
This is Tom Ritchie working with Rob Boyd and Hammer. Tom is a good example of what to look for in a protection trainer. He has put several Schutzhund titles on Bulldogs, as well as the BST 1 and 2, and has taken first place in one of our early Iron Dogs. Experience and accomplishments training Mastiff breeds, such as Rottweilers and the various bull breeds, are a big plus when you're shopping for a protection trainer. Not only should your trainer have experience with Bulldogs or Rottweilers, it is equally important that you find a trainer that actually likes Bulldogs and the Mastiff breeds. A trainer, whether professional or amateur, that has a passion for this kind of dog will better understand their strengths and weaknesses than a trainer that will do the work but only because he is being paid. Watch the body language of these two men and you can sense they have a passion for training Bulldogs and protection. Here we have Dave De La Segas and Tom Ritchie training Tom's Staffordshire Bull Terrier and Schutzhund. Some trainers won't even consider working with a Bulldog or will do so only reluctantly, but these guys relish the prospect of working Mastiff or Bull breeds in protection. Dave De La Segas has competed on an international level with Rottweilers and Schutzhund. Plus, he has trained Bulldogs that have earned numerous working titles. He knows that Bulldogs are different than the traditional guardian breeds. They have been bred for centuries to work against animals, not men. Therefore, they can have problems in the guarding exercises and can be reluctant to bark. They can also hit the end of a sleeve instead of the center because they've been bred to hit the nose of a bull or the ear of a boar. In other words, they naturally bite the extremity of an animal, not the center. But Bulldogs and Mastiffs bring a lot to the mix in protection work. In body strength and jaw strength, few dogs can measure up to a good Bulldog or Mastiff. And Bulldogs have a quality that's hard to express in words. If this powerful little Bulldog doing Schutzhund protection work looks like poetry in motion to you, then no further explanation is necessary. This is Dave Delasegas and Rob Boyd working Dave's daughter's Yog Terrier in Schutzhund protection. The ability to train non-traditional breeds in sport work is a big plus for anybody who wishes to put a title on a Bulldog or a Mastiff. Small game terriers like this Yog have also been bred primarily to work against animals, not men, and therefore represent the same challenge as Bulldogs. Yog Terriers are tremendous athletes and pack a lot of power into a small frame. This is perhaps the smallest breed of dog that is routinely used to catch wild boar.
Sleeves as big as he is. You can work other dogs with.
Here we have a beginning dog, young adult, with undeveloped prey drive. In these beginning dogs, the job of the helper is to find the dog's prey drive level. Here you can see me taking the sleeve on a leash, spinning it around, trying to get this somewhat unsure dog to focus on the sleeve in a low-stress manner. By separating the sleeve or prey object from the helper in the early training, this often frees these young dogs up to get into drive and come after the tug object. You can see this dog is hesitant and thinking. Here he gets a grip, lets go, but everything is a non-threatening manner. This dog shows somewhat of a natural defensive posture. It would be very wrong for the novice or beginning helpers to work this dog through his defensive drives since he's already unsure. By being calm and neutral and trying to focus the dog's attention to the sleeve, you'll see this dog's drive start to come up, and by the end of this session, he'll be carrying and enjoying the bite work. You can see he's very distracted by outside stimuli, so I throw the sleeve, it hits him, I try to get him focused, I get on my knees, I'm not threatening, and now the dog starts to get into the drive work. By making several misses, the dog's drive comes up, and only then do I allow him to get a grip. Now I play calm tug-of-war in a non-threatening manner. Here the dog's drive goes away, so I step back and regroup, and now the dog has got another grip, and I sit, and it's very just calm and neutral while the handler praises the dog. This is very important in the early development of these dogs, and you can see an unsure dog like this needs very calm, clear work in the beginning so as not to create more conflict in his defensive and nervous nature. The handler praises the dog calmly, and the helper makes light tugs on the sleeve to keep the dog's interest in the sleeve. Now the handler and the dog try to carry, and here you can see the dog is now carrying the sleeve, and the handler follows. His interest has been lost in the sleeve, he drops it and picks it back up. This dog will need excellent helper work to be able to progress for the BST. Our next dog is a 9-month-old young dog in his very early training that shows a lot of natural drive. Here the helper plays a little peekaboo game to get the dog's interest by hiding and developing the barking drive. This also acclimates this young dog to the blind, which will be required in the BST training later. Here the helper gets a feel for this young dog who's about 8-9 months old by making some misses with the light puppy arm. The dog shows not enough commitment for a sleeve, so the helper goes back and will get the big jute toy and put the leash onto the jute toy to separate the prey from the man, as we did with the dog previously. This allows this young dog not to have to think about the man and focus more directly in the prey object. Now his drive has come up, and again misses to build frustration. And then the grip and slip immediately with light tugs on the jute toy with this leash before releasing and letting this young dog carry. This dog shows a lot of promise at a young age. You must take great care with these young dogs not to overwork them or put a lot of stick threat or other stress on the young dog prior to developing the drive. You'll notice that this young dog almost brought the tug toy back to me. At this point, you don't reach for the tug toy. You want the dog to voluntarily bring it back. By allowing the dog to voluntarily bring it back, this shows he's confident to come back and fight more. I like to let the young dog decide when he wants to bring it back to me. Now the handler attempts a cradle, and now the helper gets the sleeve back, and again reads the dog's drives. Looking to build drive always before rewarding with a bite. By rapidly spinning this prey object, it stimulates the dog's drive to get after the object. Building prey drive and fighting drive is the #1 priority of any helper. Trying to press these dogs through aggression or defensive drives without the know-how can cause lifetime damage to the dog and also cause problems for the public at large. You'll notice with these young dogs I work most exclusively through their prey drive and let them learn to fight and win. The helper's job is to be a sparring partner. Here the dog willingly brings the sleeve back, I play with him, I lift him up on the body, and again a quick release so he gains confidence. The handler's job is to quickly move and carry. Again the dog brings the sleeve back, the bite toy back, and I lift him even higher now and see that he's confident and he's growing. This is how you develop higher and higher levels of confidence. Rubbing him on the head, playing tug-of-war, fighting him longer, countering back and forth before letting him win when he makes a nice full readjust and pulls away hard. Always asking a little more, but often being careful not to ask too much. And here the carry again. Now the dog is not restless, he's enthused. And already in the early part of this 8-9-month-old puppy's training, he's coming up in drive and having success in the bite work. Here the handler cradles and reassures the dog. And back into drive. These young dogs should always be worked at a high level of drive before rewarding with the bite. Making misses and frustration is a key element in getting this drive up. Here I make miss and again miss. Now he's ready for a bite and I back up and a chase bite, which really makes the dog feel happy and confident, and it's time to end this session with this dog.
Nobody cares about nobody cares about confirmation now. What's that true to do? What's that true to do? Right, it's not important. Hey, Fred. You gotta see people what's that? This is my young
You've just seen some natural sound with this young dog who's 8 or 9 months old in his very first session. Barking makes movement, movement makes miss, barking brings a grip, and already this young dog is biting on the sleeve. This shows a lot of promise in this young dog. This dog has natural ability to do the bite work, and he has a lot of want to and a lot of willingness. We also have a novice handler here who's trying to kind of handle on the fly, and this is a problem you'll have in your beginning training as a helper and as a handler. The dog shows, you can see again, a lot of natural drive. I don't have to do a lot of running. I can make miss, and the dog is in high drive without a lot of motion or a need for the leash on the sleeve. This dog has excellent promise. Here you can see targeting. The puppy bites the elbow. That's okay. It's our first session or two of training. We're just getting a feel for this young dog and how to train him and how to advance him. Here the handler comes up and will attempt to cradle and make a mistake by grabbing the flank. Grabbing the flank causes stress, causing the dog to let go of the sleeve. You should always cradle under the jaw and neck area without restricting the dog too heavily. This builds harmony between the handler and the dog after the dog has won his hard-earned prey object. You see this young dog shows high intensity and focus on the helper with little stimulation. And by moving when he barks, the dog quickly learns that barking makes movement. Many bulldogs have problems barking in the early stages of training. Should you run into this problem, don't overemphasize trying to get a young dog to bark. If he shows drive, give him grips. The barking will come as the dog gets older. And again, a good bite by this puppy and a carry. Here's a 2-year-old female bulldog that is actually on the sleeve, but we're using a jute toy to try to work some targeting. She has a tendency to bite towards the wrist of the sleeve. So by building some frustration, misses, running around the blind, we're going to attempt to get her to strike the sleeve more in the center. We'll also utilize some defense or aggression training shortly after we work this jute training to see if we can't get her fighting drive at a little higher level. This is the technical work I spoke about earlier, where if you're not experienced, you shouldn't do a lot of aggression or defensive training. Here we let her carry back, fight, and carry. The dog's drive is now up. She's striking in the center. The handler will make her out, and then you'll see next guarding of the sleeve. I come in and try to provoke a little bit of aggression without being too hard on her, and then we'll do a chase bite. Here, an excellent strike in the middle with a full hard grip. This is very technical work that it takes some experience to understand how to use it. Here she's carried back. She's in high fighting drive now. I hit the sleeve a little bit, taking care not to overstress the dog, yet needing to stoke her fighting drives. A quick drive and a carry, and you can see the dog is enlivened by the work. She's not overstressed, and she's very stimulated. Whenever I work civil drive, aggression drive, defense, whatever the term you want to use, I always like to reassure the dog that this isn't real serious, it's all okay. So here she cradles. With the handler, I pet her on the head and walk away, and she wins again. Here's the out, and now again a little guarding of the sleeve. I come in suspiciously, try to get a guarding response, however slight, as she shows here. This is enough. If it isn't enough, in your opinion, never overload it. Better to stop and get what this picture shows than to overload and get avoidance. Again, a very nice strike in the center of the arm. Later in this tape, you'll see us use a plant holder with jute wrapped around it to keep dogs from biting the elbows. This is, or the wrist or elbow. This is another good technique. Here's an excellent session. You'll notice how this next dog focuses on the man and not as much on the sleeve. This tells the helper that this type dog has a high amount of natural defense or aggression drive. This type of dog, the helper does not want to work with defensive techniques because he already has enough defense or too much, and it could easily overload him. Instead, we want to wake up this dog's prey instincts and then work the prey dog in a calm, non-threatening manner. The decoy should always move away once he makes the grip on a defensive-oriented dog. This dog has enough hardness and fighting drive to be tested with the stick and to see how good or bad the nerves actually are. A defensive dog, always, you must take great care not to overload his nerves or make too much avoidance. Here the handler cradles, and the helper goes away. Away from the dog is the prey getting away. This encourages the dog to bite hard and is also very non-threatening. When you go at the dog and make a stick threat like I am here, this is going to test the dog's nerves and fighting drive. Here the dog passes the test, so this dog's aggression is such that his nerves are good enough that he can be worked. With proper training and high drive, you too can be knocked down by an American Bulldog. With this next dog, I come up with some creative techniques for this naturally high defensive dog, which is in conflict after the out command and therefore has trouble staying clean in the guarding. I have the owner handler put on the sleeve to work the out and guard. This will help calm the dog's instincts to bite and fight the helper rather than out and guard on the command. The dog's guard conflict is caused by her high defensive nature. By having the handler put on the sleeve for the out, this neutralizes her natural defensive techniques since she won't be aggressive towards her own handler, which will allow her to relax and focus on the sleeve as a prey object. Building confident prey drive is the #1 objective for developing a safe and consistent sport dog. Those dogs that cannot be developed from a high defensive nature into a prey-type sport dog should not be worked in protection training. Through proper training, this dog will soon make the transformation from a defensive personality to a sport personality, as we will show you. As you can see, the dog is still in conflict, but we have the handler calm and making some errors, but this over time will work out with this dog. You can see the stress the dog shows between the pressure of the out and the pressure of wanting to fight. This is based on her high stress nerves, but we're making progress. Here the handler calmly goes back in, gets a sleeve. The dog shows stress. Everything stays calm here. Now I'll put the sleeve on and work the final portion of this session. Here the dog is still hectic. Comes a clean out. She's clean and she's rewarded with a grip. Here is several months later. Notice the difference in this dog after this training. Here she comes in, a full hard bite, much less hectic, taking heavy stick threats. You'll notice after the out how calm and reassured she is. A major difference from a couple months ago. No conflict, a quick grip, and a carry. This shows you how this training can be successful. Thought out training is always the best training. It takes time to develop proper tendencies in the bite work. Here's a 2-year-old American Bulldog with tremendous drive in the early stages of the out and revere or hold and bark command and the out off the helper. You can see this dog exhibits tremendous energy to bite. He's in the early stages of teaching him out and bark, and when he's clean and barking consistently, I'll reward him with a grip. Then calm side-to-side motion will follow, and then we'll do the out. This dog is in the early stages, as I mentioned, of teaching these behaviors, and actually more appropriately titled enforcing these behaviors. He knows what out is, but refuses, so we make some pressure, and then out and bark command is given. Here he starts to settle in, and he's rewarded with a grip. Again, calm work, and then comes another out command or a cradle and a slip. This next dog will be Hammer with Rob Boyd and myself on our first session on the bungee line. This technique is very effective for developing grip tendencies. With this training is in preparation for Rob going for his BST2. The bungee work is designed to get the dog to make a quicker strike response on the reattack. This is the first session with Hammer on the bungee, and so this work, while not perfect, will give you an illustration of how to use the bungee and how to make tension on the grip. You'll notice on these bites I'm continuously moving away from the dog on the reattack. That way the dog has to strike and strike fast, or I get out and he doesn't get rewarded with the grip. Also, this helps the dog to learn to strike in the center of the arm. Many American Bulldogs have a problem where they bite towards the wrist, and this tendency can be alleviated by using a bungee and or the cover at the end of the wrist, as you'll see later. Here we stimulate drive, get the guarding response from the dog, and make an attack. On the next one, I'll quickly jump back again. At this point, I'm getting a feel of how to work this dog on the bungee. I stimulate him with the whip to make fighting drive, make an attack, he misses, and I'm gone. The dog has to learn to strike quickly with a doubled up bungee. Here I come in and just make an attack, showing the dog things he's never seen before. This is important in developing for the more advanced work, and he's not paying attention, I get away. And I come and he fights against the bungee and grips. And now here's Hammer and a bird's eye view of the hold and bark.
He feels better when he can bump. Good fucking Hammer. Ouch! We did that one day and now he wants to go.
Got a good shot there, huh?
Yeah. Killer shot.
Close-ups are cool.
Perfect too, since my battery's going dead right now.
Ouch! Nice. Beautiful. A little bit sideways, but very quick strike. Quick dog. Hammers real quick. Come on, buddy. Boy. Boy. Hook it. Good. Hook it. Good. Good pocket, Hammer. Good pocket. You ready for a little chase, Robbie?
You thought he's gonna bite you, huh?
Never know, Rob. As soon as you think they may not,
That's when they will.
that day they will. And it hurt.
Good. Good pocket. Good. Good. Pocket. Good.
The last 15 or 20 seconds of this tape allows you to see how to properly praise your dog and the harmony between the helper, the dog, and the agitator. Here, even an advanced dog like Hammer, we work run-by misses and foundation work not unlike young dogs. This foundation work is important to keep the dog's drive up. Here we make miss, we miss, the dog's drive isn't where we like it, so we run back in the blind and wait for the drive level to come up to where we like it. Here's the strike, boom, the dog, as you can see, hits hard. This goes back to the very foundation of the bite work. The drive must be high before a grip is given. This teaches the dog to come out and go into high drive every time. If the drive isn't high, work it until it is, or the dog doesn't give a grip. Here the dog brings the sleeve back to his owner. The owner plays a little, lets the dog carry. This dog is a very clear dog for the sport. He likes it, he enjoys it, he's serious about it, but he's safe and steady at all times. This type dog is a pleasure to work and will make quick progress in his training. Here we work the hold and bark. The dog comes in dirty, Rob makes him come in clean. Until the dog comes in clean, without touching, he won't be rewarded with a grip. The dog's clean, he's barking, Rob reinforces the behavior, the helper backs up, allows the dog to feel confident, and as you can see, clean barking, keeping his drive high at all times. Rob pulls him away, the helper runs away, he sends the dog on a chase bite, and you can see he comes hard. Always keeping in mind frustration and drive levels are important. The dog is always in a high drive to want to bite, and we make misses and runaways to develop this drive. Again, he brings back to the handler plays. The dog understands it's a game, the handler lets him win, he carries. The dog should only be allowed to carry with the grip he's left with, meaning that the grip the helper slips the sleeve with. Should the dog get chewy on the sleeve or try to move his grip, you should immediately stop the dog and out the dog. Here again, we'll work some more hold and bark training. Rob will tell the dog to out and to bark. He comes in and bumps hard. He's given a correction and forced to do it again. Here he does it again, but now he's clean. Pull away, making drive, and a chase bite. You can see the dog hits hard. Next will be Dave and Belle doing a warm-up bite before a BST test in training. So here we give the warm-up bite. Belle gets a carry and an out. Dave takes her away, and I'll go into blind. It's often good when you're getting ready for a trial to test your dog under the trial rules in training. So here we'll do a mock BST bite work. I go into blind, Dave holds her by the collar and approaches the blind just like in a regular competition. And we'll do this just like a BST to see if she's ready in her training. So the helper comes out, attacks the dog, drives the dog, 2 stick hits, continues to drive, locks up, and the out command, the dog outs. Here you can see she's a little dirty and bothers the helper slightly after the out, but within the rules. Then the handler comes up and gets the dog. The helper runs away approximately 50 yards, turns and attacks the dog, and the dog must come down the field and engage the helper with the grip. So here you can see she comes very fast, makes a nice hit, drive, lock up, out. Again, she outs correctly, and again bothers the helper slightly. So this lets us know that in our training, we have to keep working on a few of the technical aspects, the control. That's what is usually the last thing to come in the biting phase. But today this was good enough, and we know if this was a BST test, she would have passed her bite work.
This next dog has good targeting skills, as you will see. But by way of demonstration, decoy Luciano Olive will show us a technique that can improve the targeting of any bulldog. Excellent targeting is an especially important skill in the hardest hitting event, because a dog cannot transfer its hitting power to the decoy efficiently unless she is banging the sleeve smack dab in the center. This skill is also essential for high scores in the BST. Luciano has worked with many bulldogs and knows that it is impossible to overemphasize good targeting. The technique is simple. As always, the dog's drive is built through misses and prey attraction. At all times, the decoy will pay attention to the dog's eyes. He will juke and make the dog miss. When the dog is targeting properly, he will feed the bite and get her to hit in the center. If the dog is looking at the center, that's where she will hit. Suit work is in principle no different than sleeve work. Misses are given in much the same fashion, but obviously using different parts of the body, such as the upper arm, chest, or leg. Stick threats are the same, whether a dog is on a suit or a sleeve. Here Luciano is using a bamboo clatter stick. When the dog gets a bite, the decoy works the dog to increase his fight drive. The suit jacket is slipped, and the dog carries the trophy just as a sleeve dog would. It is practically impossible to slip the pants, so the dogs are often started on a jacket and worked on the pants later. The dog brings the jacket back to the decoy, and then the dog outs off the carry. This dog gets a bite on the inner thigh. The decoy works the dog to improve the bite. This stokes his fight drive, just as it would in a sleeve dog. When the dog's prey drive is peaked, the decoy locks up, we see a good clean out. Suit targeting can be improved by juking away from the dog in the same manner that we saw with the sleeve. The decoy slaps the suit as a form of prey attraction and menaces the dog with body language. He is working on targeting, so he'll pay attention to the dog's eyes. The juke move is a form of miss. This new decoy is being trained to give misses to a bulldog.
Good. Good, Rob. That's it, Ryan. Perfect. A little more so you don't trip. Good. Very good. You pulled out a split second early, but excellent. Same thing. Perfect. Very nice. Right back in. Yeah, right back in. You gave him enough time. Just a split second longer. Out, remember. Right away. Good. Get your position. Good, Rob. Good. Good. Beautiful. That's exactly right. Right back in, Husky. Go ahead and stand right in your escape position now. Because it's warm, he's going to run out of drive. Perfect. Out right here. Good, good, Rob. Right away, Rob. Good. That's exactly right. Beautiful. Right back in. Hustle up. Ryan, hold it a little more square so that you don't have to bring it so high. Okay. Hold it a little more so it's just a quick move. There you go. Just like that. Make sure your bite bar is down facing. Turn it down. Turn the bite bar down. Good. That's it.
After your dog has passed the BST, you're ready to train for the 6 Iron Dog events. Start with weight pull because it is the most time consuming. Begin by teaching the dog to wear the harness. The X-shaped straps go over the dog's back. The dog's head goes through the round yoke. You must step each front foot over the chest straps one at a time. Once the harness is on, praise and feed the dog. Next, teach her to walk while wearing the harness. Hold the bar up at first, but soon let the dog get used to feeling it hit her in the back legs. You should do harness walks for several days before you do any drag pulling. Do everything you can in the harness introduction phase to make the dog want to wear the harness. Put the harness on right before you feed the dog. Go for long walks while the dog is wearing the harness. Take these walks in places that your dog loves, not just back and forth in a field as we're showing in this clip. If your dog has a strong desire to wear the harness and your later work is correct, then she will love weight pulling. If she loves weight pulling, she will pull more weight. Pull a lot of weight and you win the weight pull. Correct foundation work is what makes it all possible.
Bell star. Good. Good. Good girl. Good. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to do a little drag pulling.
Start drag pulling with a 5-pound weight and a long line. Have her pull this small weight for several days before you increase the weight and make the line shorter. Repeat the command, pull, pull, pull. Good girl, good pull. Feed and praise every 30 feet. Increase the drag weight very gradually. Before you increase the weight, get the dog moving quickly with the lighter weights so she expends a lot of energy. Weight pulling requires the handler to be enthusiastic and excited. While weight pull is not a precision sport, it is a controlled sport. It is about raw power, but it is also about controlled power. Your goal is to get the dog to pull with every muscle fiber in her body. Yet she must not be hectic or frantic. She must pull with all her being, but she must focus her strength the way a karate expert can focus all his power into a single blow and thereby multiply his natural strength. The dog acquires this skill by understanding what is required of her. If she understands that she is supposed to pull the heaviest possible load, she can almost train herself just by doing the work. As with all canine training, the secret is to build gradually and not crush the dog's drive by making her pull an impossible load and allowing her to fail. At the beginning stage of weight pull training, you have to be 100% positive. Here we have a 45-pound weight. As you ask your dog to pull heavier weights, not only will her body grow stronger, she will start to teach herself technique. Notice how the dog gets her head down as the drag weight gets heavier and her technique improves. As with human weightlifters, you must not work weights every day with your dog. You must give the muscles time off to rebuild, and you'll need to feed a quality diet with plenty of protein if your dog is drag pulling heavy weights every other day. Once she has mastered heavy drag weights, you can introduce her to cart work by pulling a garden tractor. This is a good transition step between drag pull and cart work. If you want to take a shortcut, your dog can also be trained to pull for a tug toy, as this dog is, rather than food and praise. This is a quicker method, but it is less effective, and dogs will not pull as much weight if you use this shortcut. Dogs that pull to get a tug toy bite are usually hectic and don't get their noses down and express good form, though this dog is doing quite well. Once the dog has gotten his bite on the tug toy and has pulled at least 16 feet, you should unsnap the harness and let him carry it as though you were doing protection work. In essence, the dog is doing a drag bite. He's pulling for a drag bite, which is a common sport technique. And here we see the dog being baited. He gets the bite, harness is unsnapped, and then he runs just like you would in protection work. To build strength and technique and muscle mass, you must do a great deal of drag pulling. A tire is handy because it can be weighted with rocks. You may want to bolt a round piece of plywood on the tire's bottom section to hold more rocks. Once your dog is a little more advanced with drag pulling, you should stop, feed, and praise every 100 feet, and at greater intervals as the dog gets more experienced. This dog will pull half her body weight a quarter mile in a typical workout. This is less than what an IWPA weight pull dog will do in drag pulling, because this dog must also train for all 5 other Iron Dog events. She is wearing a leash because she might need a correction if she doesn't pull to her maximum. Weight pull training is like obedience training in that you need a strong foundation of purely positive reinforcement. But once that foundation has been laid and the dog totally understands what is expected of her, then a correction is in order if she doesn't perform up to her potential. A good dog trainer must be able to read his dog and know exactly what her potential is. He must never ask her to do more than she is capable of at her current level of training, but he must not let her get away with doing less than she is capable of. In the next clip, we'll show you an example of a handler misreading his dog and doing a poor job of training. Here is a young dog just learning to drag pull. The handler makes a crucial mistake that hurts the dog's training this day. As he goes around the corner, he unwittingly drops the food bag, and there it is. The young dog sees the food bag being dropped. She stops pulling because she wants the food. He is unaware of her dilemma and keeps asking her to pull. She rebels because she's still in the phase of training where she needs 100% positive reinforcement, and she thinks she's not going to get the food anymore because she knows the bag is dropped. She still wants the food. He's demanding that she pull. She rebels. She still needs that food. She's not ready for a correction yet. To start formal cart pulling, you need to attach a rope to the back of the cart and have a brake man holding it from behind. This will prevent the cart from hitting the dog in the rear. Our camera angle doesn't show it, but there is a man with a rope standing behind this cart. The dog should be on leash for his first several weeks of cart training. This dog works for praise alone, which is a good way to weight pull train. The handler has the leash on because he's still in the beginning phase of training. But now he removes the leash because in competition you can't use a leash.
Work it, pull it, Bruno. Come on, good boy. Good boy, come on. Work it, good boy, good boy. Good boy, atta boy. Come, Bruno, come. Come, Bruno, pull it. Come on, Bruno, pull it. Atta boy, good boy, good boy. Come on, Bruno. Good boy, here. Here, atta boy, here. Good boy, good boy. Yeah, good.
Another thing that we aren't showing to save time is that in between pulls, the dog is being walked around for a minute to limber up his muscles and flush the lactic acid buildup that results from a heavy pull. On this cart pulling session, the trainer is forced to work without a brake man, so he uses his leg to stop the cart. Beginners should never do cart work without a brake man. Again, with each pull, blocks are added to make the pull progressively more difficult. But the dog must never be allowed to fail. The brakeman's other duty is to act as a spotter and to push the cart if the dog is failing. The quickest way to ruin a weight pull dog is to have him pull a load that is too heavy and without a brakeman acting as a spotter to give the cart a shove. The trainer here knows that the dog can pull this weight and he's not worried about a spotter.
Good girl. Good girl. Good girl.
Okay.
Pull! 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 Good girl, good girl. Good girl, Bellstar.
In this pull, we see a dog with bad form at the beginning, but he gets his head down halfway through and shows good form as he finishes. This hopping and head turning that we see here is bad form, but as his trainer encourages him, he gets his head down, he digs in, and he finishes with good form. Drag pulling heavy weights or large garden tractors over an extended period of time will develop good form. This dog shows mediocre form at first, but settles down and digs in right about there and finishes the pull with good form. Generally speaking, if the dog puts the energy and desire into pulling, form will get better as the weights get heavier. Some trainers try to get low while giving the pull command to focus the dog on getting her nose close to the ground. See how close the dog's nose is to the ground? Often you will see trainers banging the ground with their hand to get the dog's nose down. The main thing is to get her pulling heavy weights. An empty tractor can be too light. If your tractor is not heavy enough, place a large man on it. Training for the 12-mile run is time-consuming but not very difficult. You should ride your bike at 8 to 10 miles an hour every other day or even every third day. During training, do not go the full 12 miles. Start with only 2 or 3 miles and build up to no more than 5 or 6 on any given day. Well before the trial, test your dog with the full 12 miles, but do not incorporate this distance into your regular routine. If possible, you should ride on a natural surface, such as a dirt road or a hiking trail. Concrete or asphalt can tear up the pads of your dog's feet over long distances. If you do train your dog on asphalt, you must periodically check her pads for wear and tear. If you see small spots of blood, you must stop training until the pads heal. This dog is completing a 5-mile run. One of the risks of running a bulldog through miles of city or suburban streets is the possibility of a dog fight. You should carefully examine every house with a dog along your proposed route with your bulldog on leash and you on foot. Pay attention to the dogs that come out and growl. These dogs may be more aggressive as you run past their yards at 10 miles an hour. Pick a route that does not have aggressive dogs. The endurance test is the most physically demanding of the 6 Iron Dog events. This is an optional event for the pentathlon if you participate in all 5 of the remaining events. You may want to skip the 12-mile run if you have an exceptionally large and heavy bulldog. When you are done with your 12-mile training, let your dog drink water, but only give her half a bowl at first. Give her the other half as she has cooled down. Never push a dog too hard in endurance training. If she shows any signs of lameness, you must stop immediately and consult your veterinarian. If you skip the 12-mile run, you will need to take first places in the remaining 5 events to win a pentathlon. Start tug-of-war training by putting 2 green dogs behind a sturdy fence where they can see each other. Each dog must be on leash with a primary handler. From a stay, give a bite command while presenting the tug toy. Use a longer rope than the regulation 30 feet. The dogs will thrash the tug toy at first. Getting them to stop thrashing and start pulling backwards is 90% of tug-of-war training. You see here the dogs are pulling. When the dogs thrash the tug toy, pop them with a leash and say no. When the dogs stop thrashing and pull backwards, say good back, good, good, back. A second handler can pet the dog and praise her when she pulls backwards. The second handler can also pull on the rope or slap it to stoke the dog into tugging. Besides thrashing, the next biggest problem a dog has is surging forward. When this happens, pop her with a leash and say no. When she exhibits the correct behavior, praise her exuberantly and say good back, good back. Unsnap the tug toy and let the dog carry for a reward as you would in protection work. It is useful to have a decoy present the tug toy at the beginning of tug-of-war. Once the dog bites, immediately give the command back. Notice how this dog loses ground when he thrashes. When he stops thrashing, he holds ground or gains ground. The final problem you should worry about is a dog pulling at an angle. She should always pull straight backwards. If the dog pulls at an angle, jerk her straight and give the command back. Only praise when she is pulling straight and steady without thrashing. Your biggest reward is unsnapping the tug toy and letting the dog run with it. Ideally, you should do this when your dog is pulled backwards far enough that she would have won the tug-of-war. The next 2 dogs show nearly perfect technique. At the start of the tug-of-war, they are in stay commands. They bite on command, pull straight back on command, and do not thrash. In formal competition, the dogs must tug from behind a barrier, so they cannot see each other. This is done to prevent dog fights. For the same reason, dogs must always be leashed to their handlers during the tug. The leashes must be slack, except for brief pops if the dogs are wrapping around the barrier. You can see that the mostly brindle dog's handler is not holding the leash, so he's breaking a rule and could be disqualified. Tug of war has 4 weight categories: under 60 pounds, 60 to 80 pounds, 81 to 100 pounds, 101 pounds, and over. The best way to start a green dog in hang time is to let her watch an experienced dog with the spring pole. Ideally, the experienced dog should be the opposite sex as the green dog. In this case, the dog hanging is a male. To the right of the screen, partially off camera, a young female is watching. The young female is wearing a protection harness and being held on leash. Hang time training relies almost entirely on sport protection techniques. In sport training, it is very common to let a green dog watch a seasoned dog do bite work. The male is put in motion by his handler to create prey attraction for the young female. It is important to use dogs that are not aggressive towards each other. Keep watching the right part of the screen and you will see the young female. As with tug of war, the dog is rewarded for a good hang by unsnapping the tug toy and letting the dog run with it in his mouth. Since the male is about to be rewarded with a tug carry, the female needs to be put behind a fence. These dogs are being trained in a confined space, and she might surge forward and grab the tug if both dogs are on leash during the carry. The young female is put behind a fence where she can still see the male being worked. He continues to swing back and forth, yanking against the springs. Off camera, the young female is lunging against her fence in an effort to get at the tug toy. Again, sport techniques of building drive through frustration are being used. Agitating a dog from behind a fence is a common sport technique. It is time to put the male away. Unhooking a dog is harder than hoisting him up and hooking the chain to a tree. If the dog weighs 100 pounds or more, as this dog does, it is almost impossible for a single handler to get the job done, and it'll be necessary for both handlers to unhook the dog and put him away.
So let me pull this up and then unhook it. Got it? Did you get out? Yeah.
The experienced dog is allowed a short carry as a reward for his hang time. A green dog would require a much longer carry. The male is given an out command to make him drop the tug toy. A truly green dog would need to be cradled off the tug toy grip as you would in beginning protection training. At last, the green female is brought out from behind her fence. Even though she has never done hang time before, the female has obedience and protection training. She can therefore be put into a stay command and given a bite command. The handler will look to see that she has a deep grip before hoisting her up. Protection training has taught her to get a single grip and maintain it. This will help her with hang time. The handler will watch her jaws carefully while she is hanging. She will not suddenly drop off the tug with no warning. Her grip will weaken first. The handler must be very alert and watch for signs of a weakening grip. As long as the grip is strong, he will praise her. She starts to get chewy on the tug, so he quickly lowers her to the ground. You must never let a dog lose its grip and fall to the ground. After her first hang time session, the tug is unsnapped and she is allowed to carry. You can see how joyfully she carries the tug and how proud she is of her accomplishment. The handler will reward her further by playing tug of war with her and letting her win. He plays tug of war with her. He lets her win, and she carries. This dog has enough protection training to be outed off the carry. The handler puts the tug in his shirt, and the dog is put away.
That was pretty successful. Did you see her? Yeah. Good girl. All right. So she'd never done it before, so.
The next dog that you will see is a highly advanced hang time dog. You will notice that the handler uses obedience commands, a bite command, and an out command to control this dog. In a trial, it is best to present the tug to the dog on the ground and hoist her up into the air. In this training exercise, the handler is letting the dog leap up into the air and grab the tug. He is doing this because it is more exciting for the dog to leap up and grab it, and this way the handler is able to build drive. Putting her in a stay and making her wait to get the bite is a way to turn her drive off and on. A dog only has so much drive, just as a battery only has so much charge. If you have enough training and control over your dog, then you will be able to turn the drive off and on in between Iron Dog events, and you will have more drive left over when you need it. Hang time is the last event in an Iron Dog trial, so it is vital that your dog is able to calmly heel to the spring pole, go into a stay command, and save her energy and drive until she is released with a bite command. This is also true of tug of war, hardest hitting, and all the events except the 12-mile run. Now the dog is being spun and worked on the springs for the same reason that she was allowed to leap up and grab the tug. Observe how the handler uses obedience commands, protection commands, and protection technique while training in hang time.
Out, quiet. Out, push. Stay. Good, out, push. Push. Good, push. Good, push. Good out, push. Good out, push. Good. Excellent, Hammer. Good.
Look at the drive this dog has left after a full pentathlon. Sprint race is the one event that you should train for in the exact same way that you will compete in a trial. The basic technique is to have one handler hold the dog by the collar or harness at the starting line. A second handler will walk halfway to the finish line, call the dog, and sprint for home. The judge will start timing your dog when the first handler throws his arms straight overhead. The only question you need to answer is, will your dog run faster for food or a tug toy bite? Use a stopwatch to figure out which reward is best. Always walk away from your dog in a straight line. Notice how this dog follows the same S-shaped path that his handler used to walk to the finish line. In a trial, you must use a tug toy for bait. You may not use a full body suit or a protection sleeve. So it is better to train with a tug toy if your dog runs better for a bite than for food or praise. Here the handler does not get far enough downfield and the dog catches him before he gets past the finish line. So that's a mistake. While training for Iron Dog, you must never overstress or overheat your dog. On a warm day, you should periodically stop training and wet the dog down with a garden hose. Dogs should drink water between every event, but not so much that they get bloated. You now have all the information necessary to train for the 6 Iron Dog events and have a foundation for earning a BST, the sport title we recommend you put on your dog prior to entering an Iron Dog trial. The natural question is, what should you do with your dog after he has proven himself in Iron Dog and earned a BST? Our recommendation is that you train for the BST too. This is actual footage from the first ever BST2 trial.
ladder stick's over here, Pat.
It's in the blind, Tom. Ladder sticks in the blind. Rob. Come on this side. Which side? Okay. This side. You want me to come up that way? Maybe I'll go and make a... Come this way. Straight out. Thanks! Fuck it! Okay, our first BST two-handler in history, Rob Boyd and Hammer. I'd like to say that I've been involved in dog sport now as a helper, trainer, competitor for close to 20 years, and this BST2 is demanding. This is not easy. The dog has to deal with a lot of different things. It's probably the hardest fighting breed test that I'm aware of, unless there's something in the ring I don't know about in our breed suitability. So I think this dog deserves a big handy pass today, and we'll go over the criteria here in a second.
All right.
The portion I'm supposed to judge, I'm not going to give points, I'm going to give the ratings. I'll deal with the points later when I can think about it. Exercise 1, the blind search. The dog searches the empty blind very well. Has a little trouble discovering a second blind, wanders out of the bounds a little bit, quickly sees the helper and engages very quickly. Slight bump, shows very nice, intense guarding. The bite out of the blind is good. Could be a little bit quicker on the commitment, a little bit fuller grip. The re-attack bite is the worst bite of this dog's performance today. He bites on the wrist. The bite isn't real full, but he sustains, maintains the stick threats very, very well. So in the blind search ratings, the fight drive is high, the hardness is high, the courage is high, and the control is high. The dog is very attentive after the outs, which I really like. Now we go to exercise 2, the courage test with gunfire. Here the dog commits hard, misses the grip, and is a little hesitant upon re-engaging. It almost looked like he caught his lip a little, but that's irregardless. I only judge what I see. Here the fight drive is middle, the hardness is high, the courage is high, and the control is high. The dog's very proper on the out, very good in the guarding, very nice in the healing throughout. No, we're not able to touch the dog. The obedience overall is very, very good. The third phase, the attack out of the blind. Here the dog shines. He comes full and hard. I was actually in a bad position, but I snuck around. I could see the grip was full. He maintained the grip throughout at well over 80%. The dog was a little bit even angry here. It's his best fight of the whole performance. Here the hammerman gets fighting very, very high. Hardness high, courage high, control high.
Here we have Rob Boyd, Hammer, and I doing some of the preliminary training prior to the BST2. Rob comes out on the field and we're going to do the blind search. First he makes some healing, gives the dog a little jute toy reward as a warm-up. Then he's going to put the long line on the dog and we're going to make the dog go to one blind before he gets to the helper. This is the very early stages of the enforcement training of the blind search. He points, the dog goes around, he calls him and sends him into where the helper is. We won't do a hold and bark. There'll just be a run out and a grip to pay the dog for doing the blind search. On the second attempt, you'll notice that Hammer chooses not to go to the first blind and Rob will have to do some remedial training. Here he's allowed to carry the sleeve. Rob calls him and then we'll start over. At this point, we're allowing too many carries with the dog prior to going back to the blind search. This is a little bit of a training error. We should have immediately got the dog after the carry and got back to work. That way we keep the dog's mind focused more on the task than on the carry. Numerous places in the tape you might notice some things that aren't quite right in the training. We all make a few errors and we wanted to show you this too. So here we try a second attempt. Hammer knows the helper's in the other blind. Rob tells him sit, points to the blind. He wants the dog to search. The dog will refuse, but because Rob has the leash, the long line, he's able to block the refusal and hustle up, telling the dog, revere, revere, and as he goes around, praises him and sends him back to where the helper is. This time we'll do a hold and bark. The dog bothers the helper, and this lets us know that our blind search isn't complete and the dog's still a little dirty in the hold and bark. The dog barks, we make the grip, the out, re-attack, stick hits, some of the things that are required in the BST2. Here we're acclimating the dog to the early stages of the gunfire. Notice the helper holds the gun, makes a couple of shots, which you can't hear while the dog is away, and then immediately slips after the dog gets the grip. Notice also we have a plant holder on the sleeve. Good, here another grip, couple gunfire shots, and a slip. The plant holder is to keep the dog from biting the wrist. Here's a re-attack, and you can see the dog started to target to the wrist, but because the plant holder with the jute was on there, he stayed center. There's a shot at you. Now we're working Hammer on an attack with the clatter stick so that he gets used to this sound. The clatter stick isn't part of his everyday training, so accustoming him for the BST2 is very important. So we give him a grip, clatter stick, he gets to carry. Now you can see the illustration of the planter with the jute on the end of it, on the end of the sleeve. This is used to keep the dog from biting the wrist. Many bulldogs and or other breeds have problems with biting towards the wrist. Here we're doing a strict obedience where the dog knows where the helper is. Rob's making Hammer heel, which is required off-leash in the BST2 training. So here Hammer knows him in the blind and he has to do perfect obedience before he's going to get to bark or bite. You can see this dog's training is at quite a high level and he accepts that he must do the obedience under the distraction. This is where discipline in your obedience training is mandatory if you want to attain control and have the ability to compete at a higher level. Here's an attack, powerful hit. The plant holder keeps him off the elbow, the wrist rather, and then the out and the guard of the helper. Some dogs like to bark, some like to stare intently. And a miss. Excellent miss. The dog was high and dry, but he was slow to the attack. Now an attack. Again, acclimating him to everything he'll need to see. You can see the dog's fighting drive is high now. Here we have some more training with Hammer. Rob's doing healing with the dog. Once you attain your BST1, if you want to go for BST2, you're going to have extensive ability to heal under distraction. The dog knows I'm there, he's in drive. Here we're going to work on the hold and bark. He comes in and bothers the helper, we pull him back. Only when he comes in clean without bothering the helper will he be allowed to get a grip. 3 times now, 4 times he's bothered, he's pulled back, corrected, now 5. And now he comes clean, he's rewarded through good behavior, and he'll be paid with the grip. This is the best technique when teaching the hold and bark. If you allow the dog to come in, bother the helper, receive a correction, and still get a grip, the dog will consistently bother the helper because the reward of the grip is much more pleasing to him than the worry of the correction. That may sound technical, but I think it makes sense. The dog must be clean before he's rewarded with a grip, and then he's allowed to carry, and then out and back to the helper. And notice now the dog comes in clean because he knows this is the only way he's going to get what he wants. Over and over and over, we repeat the same behavior. And there a miss. The dog was slow to the strike, so we make miss. He comes in guarding. He's a little dirty. Rob doesn't like it, pulls him back. Guarding. And the dog is very intense because the last time the helper got away. And there's another miss. The dog was too slow. The dog will learn to strike very fast by making these misses, both on the bungee and a long nylon line. And there you can see I had no chance to get away. The dog was too quick in the strike, and he struck right in the middle of the sleeve. Here's Maxine, a powerful female, and I'm going to make a little example of how stimulating her aggression drives with slight threats, while not overdoing it, gives her high fighting drive and a lot of enthusiasm about biting the sleeve when the prey drive is brought through the zone. Again, this working of aggression or defensive tendencies in dogs, if you're going to do it, just do a little of it, especially if you're inexperienced or none at all. Always remember, work the prey drive. And again, you'll notice I pet the dog and reassure the dog that this is not life and death situation. But some American Bulldogs respond very well with a little bit of a guarding of the prey or a suspicious behavior by the helper. Here she attacks really quick on the re-attack, full hard grip, and her fighting drive is very high. Another out, and she's very intense on me. This is the natural drive of this dog, is to be intense on the helper. Yet her nerve base is good enough that by making a little bit of aggression and then rewarding with the prey, she doesn't lose her understanding that this is fun. It just helps to stoke her drive to a little bit higher level. Here you'll also notice that the handler gives her some slaps on the head for the out. While doing this is acceptable, ever doing this too hard is never acceptable, but a light tap on the head is oftentimes a good correction when the dog refuses the out command. Here I make a little defense attraction with light touch of the whip, light with the hands. This response, while it may look slight on the dog's part, it's enough. I won't go further than this, and yet you'll still see the dog strike hard and fast. Boom. So there's no need to push aggression or defense drives in most dogs. You can touch it a little bit and then leave it alone. And if the dog doesn't have the prey to work, then you're not going to make it anyway. Here again, she bites, outs, bites, and carries. Here she comes very fast on a courage test and slip and reward. Very strong fighting drive, especially for a female. Most males have higher drives and more power than most females, but it's always a pleasure to work an excellent female.